And joining me now on the show is Tony Lyons. Tony, welcome back to Compass.
Thanks so much.
Now, Robert himself came out and said last week that things were that bad with the Democrats, he may have to change or pivot his campaign and go into a new direction. What exactly does he mean by that?
Well, I think that there's a chance that the DNC will force him to run as a third-party candidate because they've created this situation where they're making all these rules, and these rules are not normal rules that you would make. These are rules that are making it so that if he campaigns in a certain state, then he's penalized in another state, that Biden can get delegates even if he's not running in a state. He can get delegates in a state. He can get all the delegates in a state unless Bobby Kennedy gets 80% of the votes. So all of these crazy rules that nobody in their right mind could believe are fair, and they've been putting these in place. So what I think's happened is that the Democratic Party is no longer the party that it used to be, and that Bobby Kennedy is the Democratic Party. So they're trying to kick him out, but he will remain a Kennedy Democrat. He will remain an anti-war Democrat, an anti-corruption Democrat, somebody who cares about free speech. I mean, these are the fundamental values of the Democratic Party. And the DNC no longer has that. The Biden administration no longer has that. So what can Bobby Kennedy do if his party has changed so much and is then trying to kick him out for having all of the values that they've represented for the last 60 years, since his father and his uncle were killed? So he is not really going to leave the party. He still is the party, and they've left it.
When you compare the Trump campaign, the idea of draining the swamp, the idea of an outsider breaking in and at least adjusting or exposing the rhino component of that party, many thought that Bernie Sanders, as an independent running with the Democrats, may have been the one to cleanse them, but the opposite, that was the exposure. Now that we've seen the exposure, now you've got Robert Kennedy Jr. himself now being that party. And as you've described the Democrats, is the Kennedy campaign or the Kennedy approach similar, I suppose, to what Trump was able to achieve when he broke through in 2016, in the sense that it was exposing these parties for what they've become?
Yeah, Donald Trump exposed the deep state, or that, agencies of government were controlled by outside companies, or were, taking so much power to themselves that they would not allow the president or somebody else to control them, so that they then could make decisions separately from the democratic process. And I think that, that's a lot of what Bobby Kennedy says. I mean, he talks about the captured agencies of government. So draining the swamp means a couple of different things. It means giving people back the power, that the people in a democracy are supposed to be able to vote for candidates and for policies that they believe in. They're not voting for the unelected deep state to make all of the decisions. So, but the problem that we saw with Donald Trump is that when he had the opportunity, he didn't drain the swamp. And Bobby Kennedy has been suing government agencies and many of these companies that control those agencies for the last 40 years. And given the opportunity, he understands them better than anybody else does. And he would go in there and he would gut those agencies, and he would put people in charge who would do what needs to be done. And he would change the control process, and he would decouple those agencies from the handful of gigantic corporations who are controlling them.
This is the news that many people want to hear, and the best part of it is that now there is a genuine candidate who's talking the real talk about the corruption, and a Kennedy Democrat is a Kennedy Democrat, and that is different from what we've seen. Tony Lyons, it's been a pleasure to be able to speak to you again on Compass.
Thanks so much.